So we use justice to do political baiting and political negotiations in this country.
Every time something serious happens in this country, Rufai Oseni from Rise TV always finds a way to say exactly what people are thinking. And this time, he dropped a bombshell. Live on TV, Rufai blasted President Tinubu government. And honestly, many Nigerians couldn't agree more. Social media is full of people praising him for speaking truth to power, saying he's the voice of the common man. But not everyone agrees. Some say he should have toned it down. Watch this video and tell me, what do you think?
Okay, you see, you know what heralds Nigeria's judiciary as we speak today are the political process as regards prosecution of people that have done political offenses in this country. The words of a famous politician, which anyway he has come back to say he was quoted out of context.
Infamous.
That once you join a certain political party, your sins are forgiven. So see, we can have judiciary conferences from here to Kutuwenji, as far as I'm concerned. The people know that there's no fairness and sincerity. All of a sudden, once EFCC threatens some people, the next thing, they join a certain political party, we don't hear EFCC again. Or they go and beg, we don't hear EFCC again. We've talked about the humanitarian minister, we've talked about the case in Rivers State, declaration of state of emergency, that the Supreme Court did not hear. But the same Supreme Court was so quick to hear a local government matter that involved some people just last year.
End of last year.
End of last year. In about 1 or 2 months, they quickly heard that case. But how do you want the judiciary to perform properly when people are building houses for judges in this country and we are seeing it? Governors are giving largesse and cars to judges. Until we have a way to do it, that politicians don't have to hand these things over to judges, we can never have a fair judiciary. Ayo, is it not in this country we all lived in 2019 because of a wrangling as regards a Senate presidency race? The case of Goje, a nolle prosequi was declared, and the governor was let go so that the race was going to favor some people in the Senate. There were articles written about that in this day as regards Goje and nolle prosequi. So we use justice to do political baiting and political negotiations in this country. And justice is only served. The people that truly go to jail in this country are those that don't know people at the top. Once you know people at the top, your sins are forgiven. We can go on a long litany of these issues, and we know nothing will happen. Is it not in this country that even the EFCC chief himself said concerning a governor, if we don't prosecute him, I will resign. We are waiting for the prosecution. The case is in courts. But you can see that activity is not activity in again. So we know these people. What kind of democracy are we practicing? It's not a joke. Should we now talk about the pardon that people have eviscerated and said is a class act in shambolic dispensation of reasoning? And afterwards, the Attorney General of the Federation, my dear Egbo, they try to tell us what we don't know by saying that they're going to put it up for review. Nobody, the Attorney General has no right for any review of a pardon. That has gone. That is just said to placate Nigerians that are suffering. So what judiciary do we have? And all of us are guilty in all of this. That's why when Fela sang many years ago that that Archbishop na miliki, Pope na enjoyment, Imam na gbalado, even the religious bodies share in this, even the civil society share in this.
Don't speak ill of the
I'm sorry, Ayo. Is it not where we were sitting when civil society were defending a governor with corruption charges? Wasn't the media even part of it? Is it not under Fela that a judge confessed that he was pressured? That he did nothing wrong? Is it not under, during Fela's case, that a judge confirmed that he was pressured? So what country do we live in? We live in a joke. And that's why they will stifle voices. The same people that was easy for them to protest against Jonathan, protest against the military, they will stifle the voice of protest. That's why ordinary flour is not scaring them. You carried flour to honor people. Some people were pushing the flour away. It speaks volumes of the democracy we practice. That's why till today, a protest happened. Mr. Bayo Ononuga was saying that a lawyer does not have the rights, that the NBA should look at it. It's in a case in court. But when the likes of them, Ganifa Wemi, were on the streets, you supported them. So the question we ask is, what changed? How democracy are we running? What democracy are we running? If it favors us, we scream. People are talking about Nnamdi Kanu not because I support everything he did, but we are calling for fairness because in the same country, we are so seeing how it's so quick to pardon bandits and criminals. In fact, they will sue Ashoebi for them under something called Operation Suluhu, where they say they want to rehabilitate them. Aren't we seeing it in this country? Is it not same in this country? And people are saying that we are misplaced when we are talking about. I'm not just talking about Nnamdi Kanu. The Court of Appeal had ruled. In fact, in the case they took to the Supreme Court, it was 4-1. There was one dissenting. Ogunwumiju dissented. That leave this man and let him be. So I'm not just talking. But is it not in the same country that we are pardoning bandits? Jailbreak is happening. Prisoners are leaving. Nothing is being done to them. Is it not in the same country people are taking photo ops with bandits? Are they not meeting communities? Why do we like to deceive? You see, the reason why Nigeria has never moved forward is because we thrive on deceit. It's a country of deceit. Leaders will deceive us. The people will deceive each other. The little data boys will deceive themselves. When people are taking their future away from them, they are still tweeting in support of the people. So what society, what country can we build this way? It's hypocrisy. And that's why we continue to keep talking here. We say our own to them, like they listen, they don't listen. As regards to Omieko, I'm happy, congratulations. But Vimbai threw a very strong bomb. And let me, I will say it fully. As long as you are collecting money from France to do Omieko, hope you know you are losing your sovereignty. Because that's when people will now come and say, hey, America cannot talk to us this way. Our sovereignty is key. Our this is key. Like Vimbai said, she said it in Queen's English. Me, I will speak it like a Yoruba man that I am. I foresee a day, we should look forward to a day where Africa capitalism.
I was going to say, but an illuminist champion in that.
That's what we should do.
Afri-capitalism.
Guilty. These cases need to be expedited, and by now, if we compare to reports from 2017 and now almost 10 years later, we would have thought that those kinks that hinder the fast tracking of these cases would have been ironed out. If you remember 2018, 2019, we saw convictions of former governors. We saw convictions of high profile cases. Where are those convictions today? That's what we want to see. So as much as we applaud some victories in other areas, we want to see those convictions. Now to the area of the judiciary. The theme of separation of powers has been a consistent theme that we've seen over the past 2 years. And there have been several high-profile cases as well that have been exemplary to this. If we look at the case of Senator Natasha Adwara, in essence, that was about separation of powers. How much can the judiciary get involved in what happens in the floor of the National Assembly? There was the River State case. Beyond the Supreme Court, there were the other 40 cases that were instituted challenging the case, the declaration of a state of emergency in River State. But did we see a transparent, effective, efficient judicial process? No, we did not. So I think that the judiciary still has a long way to go. We continue to hear about reform. The administration also say they've tried to give reprieve in the form of to ensure that the judicial officers, receive the necessary benefits and they're compensated commensurately for their work. However, there's still a lot of work to do. I have to applaud them for a few cases of suspensions of justices. If you remember, there was Justice Inyang who was suspended because the justice had made a ruling in a case that had not even been heard. But we want to see more of that. We're not saying that they're all corrupt, but we want to say that the accountability needs to continue to flow around various judges so that we can also have confidence that those bad eggs within the system are also being dealt with accordingly. Now let's move over to a day of protest yesterday that saw the FCT being shut down. Reports say that the Southeast was also largely shut down. It was a quiet day, not necessarily protest, but more of a quiet day in the Southeast. Now we ask ourselves, where are we going? We continue to speak about the heavy-handedness of our police forces. And the irony is that this marks 5 years of another mega protest that had challenged the heavy-handedness of the armed forces, of the police forces. Yet here we are. Now we understand that in a protest, the police has limits that they're supposed to follow, just the same way that protesters have limits that they're supposed to follow. Now we saw protesters encroaching in the area that had been ruled by the court to have been off limits with regards to the protest. Was the best way to reinforce the the fact that those areas were off limits was the best way to fire bullets and to spray tear gas in the nation's capital. We ask ourselves, the rules of engagement, what governs them? When you're dealing with protesters who are unarmed, we watched it. They were unarmed. And they're now having to run for their lives, even though they're engaging in a peaceful protest. And I know the police have spoken and they've said that, well, they were encroaching in an area that was off limits. But we now say that, was that the correct use of force in that instance? Other instances here in Lagos State, we saw Yemi Ademolakum laying flowers at the toll gate. We ask ourselves, what are the laws around memorializing places? Yes, Lagos State does have the Lagos State traffic law of 2018, I believe, and there's the sanitation laws as well, which say that in some instances you can be stopped from, wanting to lay something in a busy road. But again, how was it handled? If there was an instruction that it was illegal for memorials, any memorial flowers to be laid at that location on that day, why could it not have been handled in a more civil way? These are the issues
to the stories from yesterday in terms of the protests in Abuja, in Lagos. Berger, Max Olopara was there, and he made some very salient points when spoken to. Number one was that the police have said that there was a court order stopping the protest. But what they said, or the protesters have said, that they did not see any court order, number one. Number two is that the restrictions as to where they could protest was limited to the National Assembly and Aso Villa. And so the areas where that was in contention, where they gathered, had nothing to do with the court order. And then it would be important for us to actually see the court order that was gotten from the police and from the court. Also, I think it's important to talk about the selective obedience of court orders, because it's the same court order that we have championed about how Nnamdi Kanu, by a number of times, court orders, even up to the tune of awarding him 1 billion naira in damages to against the Nigerian federal government, hasn't been obeyed. So why is it selective justice, selective choice of when to obey court order or when not to obey court order that is a plague of the Nigerian system? And so that's another issue he brought up, but that was very important. Something else that we must also highlight is the protocol for security agencies to manage protests and protesters in Nigeria. We've talked about what happened yesterday, where tear gas was used on protesters as early as 7 a.m. Unarmed protesters, I must mention, where live bullets were shot at, whether in the air or anywhere, at protesters. What is this thing about dissenting voices and silencing dissenting voices under this administration? I say this because whether it be via protest or via even political parties, it is the silencing of any voice that opposes or dissents or is dissenting to the main party or to the government in power, and that does not all go well for democracy. We cannot have a democracy where it is only sycophancy that is the order of the day, and sycophants are the ones who have the ears of government. It does not all go well for democracy, and no administration can thrive on that. The successes you record will only last for a moment, but the results will not show. And that's why we keep talking about the government of propaganda, where we are making announcements that seem positive but has no effect or obvious effect on the lives of the people. And so back to what happened yesterday at Lagos toll gate with Madam Olekun, and talking about this resistance to opposition voices, or this resistance for citizens to exercise their rights, whether it be to free association, movement, or just expressing an emotional moment based on what happened 5 years ago. And so she went to the toll gate, and according to her report, and I believe Adefemi is going to be taking this on world, maybe I'll take over that in more detail. There she was accosted by a man of war. Because they were not armed, she was able to resist and talk back. But she said that at this point, 5 armed policemen then approached them, was not captured on camera, approached them and were asking them to leave the place. What crime or offense did they commit by going to put wreaths or flowers as a memorial at the Lagos toll gate? They were not obstructing traffic, they were not littering the streets, they were just going to place flowers on the toll gate. Why this excessive show of force under this administration? This cannot be the legacy of a man who touts himself as a Democrat. It cannot be.
Did Rufai say it exactly as it is, or did he cross the line? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more political updates.